A woman who can't even cover one dinner bill shouldn't act like she belongs in this family, Claire. My sister-in-law Vanessa hissed that at me in a packed seafood restaurant after ordering lobster and expensive wine on purpose. 11 months later, Vanessa's face turned gray and her hand started shaking in front of a crowded office conference room. As always, before we dive into a story with an ending that's going to feel really satisfying for you, let's do a quick roll call. Type present and the city you're watching from in the comments. For everyone who has liked and subscribed, I pray that Allah makes your problems easier, widens your provision, and keeps your body healthy. Thank you, my friends. Now listen carefully to my story. I'm Claire Morgan, and for the longest time, I was the kind of woman people describe as easy to be around, when what they really mean is I don't fight back fast enough. I grew up in a normal middle-class family in Ohio with a schoolteacher mom and a dad who fixed heating systems for half the neighborhood. We didn't have much extra money, but we had rules. If you borrowed something, you returned it. If you made a mess, you cleaned it. If someone fed you, you thanked them. I thought those were just basic things everyone understood. Then I married Ethan Parker, and I learned very quickly that the Parker family had a totally different set of rules. Ethan and I met when I was 28 and working as an operations coordinator at a regional logistics company. He was charming in that smooth, calm way that makes you feel safe before you realize he mostly uses that calm voice to avoid responsibility. He worked in sales for a wine distributor, dressed well, tipped big when we were dating, and talked a lot about family values. He told me his parents were traditional, close, and a little intense but loving. The little intense part was a lie. His mother, Diane Parker, had that polished suburban smile that looked perfect from across the room and fake the second she got near you. His father, Harold, barely spoke unless Diane looked at him first, like he needed permission to have an opinion. And Ethan's younger sister, Vanessa, was the type of woman who could insult you while fixing her lipstick and still act shocked if you reacted. When Ethan proposed, Diane hugged me and said, "We're so happy to welcome you." Then she pulled back, looked me up and down, and added, "You'll need to learn how we do things around here, of course." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. After the wedding, Ethan convinced me it would be smart for a year or two to move into the guest wing of his parents' big house while we saved for our own place. It was one of those large stone houses in a quiet suburb with a perfect lawn, a formal dining room no one actually liked, and a kitchen where Diane ruled like she was the CEO of a company instead of a retired real estate agent. The first week I moved in, I labeled a shelf in the pantry Claire and Ethan because I'd bought groceries for both of us. Diane peeled the label off in front of me and said, "In this house, we don't divide food. We share. Unless something is clearly for a guest." Then she put my almond milk on the bottom shelf, next to the dog treats. I remember standing there holding a bag of oranges, smiling like an idiot, thinking she probably didn't mean anything by it. That was my pattern back then. I explained away everything. Vanessa came and went all the time, even though she had her own condo downtown. She'd walk into the house without knocking, drop her designer bag on the kitchen island, and start talking about herself immediately. "Claire, can you make me a coffee? Oat milk, cinnamon on top." "Claire, did you move my package? Don't touch my deliveries." "Claire, can you iron this blouse? I have a dinner." It wasn't even what she asked. It was how naturally she acted like I was assigned to her. The weirdest part was Ethan. If I brought it up later in our room, he would kiss my forehead and say, "Babe, she's just immature. Ignore it." If Diane criticized how I folded towels, how I seasoned chicken, or how I sat during dinner, yes, she once corrected the way I sat, he'd sigh and say, "She's old school. Don't take it personally." Everything in that house was don't take it personally. But I started noticing little things that didn't feel small. Diane asked me about my salary a lot. Not in a normal way. In a detailed way. "How much is your monthly take-home after taxes? Do you still have student loans? How much is in your savings now that you're married?" At first I thought maybe she was trying to help us budget. Then one night at dinner, she said, "I told Ethan it's good you're practical with money. Men need that in a wife if they want to grow." Ethan didn't even look up from his plate. I forced a smile and said, "We're both trying to be responsible." Diane gave a little laugh. Of course. Although let's be honest, dear, Ethan was raised around comfort. He's not used to counting. That line stayed with me. A week later, I came home from work early because a client meeting was canceled. As I walked past Diane's home office, I heard my name. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I froze because she said it so sharply. I don't care if Claire asks questions, she was saying. She signs what Ethan puts in front of her. She wants to be a good wife. I stood there with my laptop bag sliding off my shoulder, my heart beating so hard I could hear it. Then Harold mumbled something I couldn't catch, and Diane lowered her voice. I moved before they saw me and went straight upstairs. That night I asked Ethan, "Did your mom need me to sign something?" He looked confused for half a second, then shrugged. Maybe she was talking about insurance forms? Dad's always updating paperwork. What paperwork? Claire, he said, already irritated. Why do you always assume the worst? I had asked one question. I said, I don't assume the worst. I just heard my name. He rolled over in bed and pulled the blanket up. Please don't start drama with my parents over nothing. I stared at the ceiling for a long time after that. That was the first night I had the clear feeling that I was living inside a conversation I wasn't allowed to hear completely. A few months passed and I kept trying. I cooked. I cleaned up after myself. I bought groceries when Diane forgot. And I even covered a utility bill once when Ethan said cash was tight because of a delayed commission payment. Then his delayed commissions became a regular thing. Can you get dinner tonight? I'm waiting on a check. Can you cover my car payment this month? Just until next Friday. Can you put this on your card? I'll pay you back. At first he paid me back, sometimes. Then he stopped, and every time I asked he acted hurt. We're married, Claire. Why are you keeping score? I wasn't keeping score. I was trying to understand why my husband, who used to order expensive cocktails when we dated, suddenly never had money unless it was for golf with clients. The restaurant dinner happened on a Friday in late spring, and honestly, if Vanessa had just been rude, maybe I still would have found a way to forgive everything. But she planned it. It was Diane's birthday, and she said she wanted a simple family dinner. Simple turned out to be one of the most expensive seafood places in the city, the kind with white tablecloths, a giant tank near the entrance, and servers who recited specials like they were performing. I checked the menu prices and almost choked on water. Vanessa arrived 20 minutes late in a cream blazer and sunglasses, even though it was already dark outside. She kissed Diane, ignored me, and slid into the chair across from Ethan. Ooh, they have the cold water lobster. Tonight, she said, snapping the menu shut like she already knew. I'm getting that. And a bottle of the Chablis. Not by the glass. The bottle. Diane smiled proudly. Treat yourself, sweetheart. I ordered grilled salmon and iced tea. Ethan ordered steak and a whiskey. Harold asked for soup and crab cakes. Vanessa added oysters for the table because we're celebrating, then looked at me and said, Claire, don't be stiff. Live a little. I laughed tightly. I'm good, thanks. Dinner was loud and fake happy. Diane talked about a charity luncheon. Vanessa talked about a man she was seeing casually who owned 2 gyms. Ethan kept checking his phone under the table. At one point, the server asked if we wanted dessert, and Vanessa said, yes, the chocolate torte and the creme brulee. We'll share. No one asked me. Then the bill came. The server placed it near Ethan first, but Vanessa reached out fast and touched his wrist. Actually, she said sweetly, Claire's got it tonight. I looked up, thinking she was joking. I even smiled. Then Diane said, yes, dear, you should. Ethan told us you got a nice bonus. My stomach dropped. I had gotten a performance bonus, but I had told Ethan in private because I wanted to use it to pay down one of my student loans. I turned to him. You told them? He gave me this soft, warning look. It's family. Vanessa leaned back and crossed her arms. Come on, Claire. Don't be weird over one dinner. I opened the bill folder. It was over $900. $900. For 6 people. I felt heat in my face, but this weird calm came over me too. I closed the folder, handed it back to the server, and said, very clearly, separate checks, please. The whole table went silent. Vanessa let out a laugh like she couldn't believe what she heard. Excuse me? I repeated it. Separate checks. Diane's mouth tightened. Claire. I looked at the server, not at them. Please split mine and Ethan's together if needed, but not the whole table. Vanessa put her fork down.
Wow.
You're doing this? In public. I said, I'm paying for my meal. That's not a problem. Then she said the line from the hook, loud enough for the next table to hear. A woman who can't even cover one dinner bill shouldn't act like she belongs in this family, Claire. I couldn't breathe for a second. I waited for Ethan to say something. Anything. He rubbed his forehead and said to me through clenched teeth, You're embarrassing everyone. I stared at him. I'm embarrassing everyone? The server was standing there, frozen, and I felt bad for him, but I wasn't backing down. Please split it, I said again. Diane reached for the bill, like she was rescuing the situation. Never mind. Put it on my card. Vanessa muttered, cheap, and picked up her wine glass. The rest of dinner was dead silence, with little fake comments about traffic and weather. On the drive home, Ethan exploded. What is wrong with you? He snapped, slamming the steering wheel at a red light. You made my mother look bad on her birthday. I made her look bad? Vanessa ordered half the menu and volunteered my money. It was one dinner. It was $900, Ethan. He laughed without humor. You really do think like a small person. That sentence hurt worse than Vanessa's, because it came from him. I looked out the window and didn't say another word all the way home. When we got back, Diane was waiting in the kitchen in her robe, like she'd raced us there. She looked at Ethan, not me. Did she apologize? Ethan said, no. Diane nodded slowly, then finally looked at me. In this family, generosity matters. If you can't understand that, we have a bigger problem than a restaurant bill. I said, generosity is not forcing someone to pay. Vanessa, who had somehow already changed into pajamas and was eating leftover cake at the island, laughed and said, oh my God, she's still going. I looked at Ethan again. Are you seriously okay with this? He threw his car keys on the counter. I'm okay with people who know how to act. I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and sat on the floor in the dark. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there with my coat still on, hearing my own heartbeat in my ears. That night, I checked our joint bank app, and that's when I saw something I had never noticed before because I had trusted him too much. There were multiple transfers from our account to Vanessa over the last 3 months. 300, 500, 800, memo lines, family help, urgent, short term. I scrolled and scrolled until my hands started shaking. The next morning, I asked Ethan in the bedroom while he was knotting his tie, why are you sending Vanessa money from our account? He didn't even pause. She was between freelance contracts. For 3 months. She pays me back. Where? He turned then, finally annoyed. Why are you checking every transaction now? Because you told your family about my bonus, and last night they tried to spend it. He stepped close to me and lowered his voice. You're spiraling over dinner. This is exactly what my mom means. You create stories. I said, it's not a story. I can see the transfers. He smirked a little, and I hated that smirk because it made me feel like a child. Then maybe learn to trust your husband. He left for work, and I stood there in our room thinking, why do I feel like I'm the one doing something wrong when I'm looking at my own bank account? From that day, things changed in a way that was impossible to deny. Diane started making comments in front of people. At Sunday lunch with Ethan's aunt and uncle, she said, Claire is very careful with money. Extremely careful. We're trying to teach her family means sharing. Vanessa added, she literally made us split checks on Mom's birthday. Over 1 bottle of wine. 1 bottle was a joke because she'd ordered the most expensive bottle on the list, but they told the story like I refused to pay for bread. Ethan sat there chewing and said nothing. At work, I was distracted all the time. My friend and coworker Naomi, who sat 2 desks over, noticed first. Claire, you okay? She asked one afternoon. You've reread that shipping report 3 times. I almost said, I'm fine, because that was my default answer. Instead, I said, do you ever feel like people are slowly making you look crazy on purpose? Naomi swiveled her chair toward me.
Yes.
And usually when I feel that, I'm right. I laughed a little because I needed to. She said, what happened? I gave her the short version. The dinner, the bank transfers, Ethan telling his family about my bonus. Naomi didn't overreact. She didn't tell me to leave him immediately. She just listened, then said, start documenting everything. I frowned. Documenting. Screenshots.
Dates.
Messages. Transactions. If it's nothing, fine. But if it's not nothing, you'll thank yourself. That night I started a folder on my laptop called Home. I know that sounds innocent, but it wasn't. It was my private file of everything that felt wrong. Screenshots of bank transfers. Pictures of receipts. A note with dates of comments Diane made. A voice memo I recorded in my car after one argument because I was starting to doubt my own memory. Then, about 2 weeks later, the first real plant dropped into my lap. It happened because Ethan forgot his work bag in the kitchen and asked me to bring it to his office. I almost said no.
I
should have said no, but I was still trying to be the supportive wife. When I got to his office building, he texted me that he was in a client meeting and told me to leave the bag with reception. As I was handing it over, a thin envelope slipped out of the side pocket and landed on the floor. Reception bent to pick it up, but I saw my name typed on the front. Claire Morgan Parker. I said quickly, that's mine, and took it before she could look closer. I should have handed it back unopened. I didn't. I waited until I was in my car, locked the doors, and opened it. Inside was a copy of a life insurance policy application. The insured person was me. The policy amount was $500,000. The beneficiary listed was Ethan Parker. I went cold. There were forms clipped behind it, and one page had a section about supplemental accidental coverage. Another page had a signature line with my name typed under it. The signature looked like mine at first glance. Then I looked closer. It wasn't mine. It was close enough to pass if no one cared. But I knew my own handwriting. The C was wrong. The loop on my M was too sharp. My real signature slants slightly up. This one was flat. I read the date on the application. It was filed 6 days after the restaurant dinner. I sat in my car gripping the paper so hard it crumpled at the edge. A security guard knocked lightly on my window and scared me so badly I screamed. Ma'am, you okay? He asked through the glass. I rolled the window down a little.
Yes. Sorry.
I'm fine. He looked concerned. You've been parked here a while. I nodded and smiled like a crazy person. Just bad news. I'm leaving. I drove 3 blocks before I had to pull over because my hands were shaking too much. A life insurance policy is not automatically evil. I know that. Married couples have them all the time. But Ethan had never discussed this with me. And the signature wasn't mine. When I got home, I hid the copies inside an old shoebox under winter sweaters in the back of my closet. Then I scanned the documents into my home folder and emailed the scans to my private email address. That night at dinner, Ethan acted normal. Diane asked me to pass the potatoes. Vanessa talked about a weekend trip to Napa. Harold stared at the table. I kept looking at Ethan's hands, thinking, did you do this? Did your mother? Did you all sit together and decide my life was a line item? I barely slept. The next morning, I asked him one careful question while he was pouring cereal. Did you take out any insurance policies recently? He looked up too fast, then recovered. For what?
For us.
Life insurance or anything. He snorted. Why? Are you planning to die? Diane, standing at the stove, laughed. I said quietly, I'm serious. He shrugged. My company offers stuff. I sign forms all the time. Why? I watched his face and said, no reason. I saw an ad, that's all. He turned back to the fridge and said, then stop reading weird things online. My chest felt tight all day at work. I told Naomi at lunch, and showed her the scanned pages on my phone in a corner booth where nobody could hear us. She read every line, then looked at me and said, "Claire, this is not normal." "I know. Did you sign it?"
No.
She tapped the screen. "Then someone forged your signature." I stared at the table. What do I do? First, make more copies. Second, don't confront him yet. Third, talk to a lawyer, or at least your bank.
Somebody.
Today if you can. I wanted to. I really did. But fear does something weird to you. It doesn't always make you run. Sometimes it makes you freeze because your brain can't accept that the people eating dinner with you might be building a legal plan around your body. I said, "Maybe I'm overreacting." Naomi leaned in.
No.
"Listen to me. Even if this is just paperwork, to them, they forged your name. That alone is serious." I nodded, but I still didn't go to a lawyer that day. Instead, I went home and tried to watch everyone harder. That's when the gaslighting got worse. I started noticing Ethan reading my face all the time, like he was checking how much I knew. If I was quiet, he'd say, "Why are you in a mood?" If I asked a normal question, he'd sigh and tell me I was interrogating him. One evening, I asked why he needed my social security number again after I had already given it to him months earlier for tax paperwork. He set his phone down and said, "You know what? I think you like problems." "What?" "You're never happy. My family tries to include you, and you pick fights. I ask one thing, and you act like I'm stealing your identity." I laughed once because it was so insane. "You literally just proved my point." Then Diane appeared in the doorway at the exact right moment, like she had been waiting. "What's going on?" she asked in that soft, fake voice. Ethan rubbed his temples. "Claire thinks I'm stealing from her now." I opened my mouth. "That's not what I—" Diane put her hand on her chest. "Claire, honey, no one here is your enemy. This family has done so much for you." I stared at her. "Done what, exactly?" Her face changed instantly. "Excuse me?" "There it is," Ethan muttered. "Attitude." Diane stepped closer. "You moved into our home. You eat our food. You use our utilities. My son married you, and all you do is question us." I felt my ears ring. I work full-time. I pay bills. I buy groceries. Vanessa, of course, walked in right then and leaned on the doorframe.
Wow.
"This is fun." I looked at Ethan, hoping for one normal sentence from him. "One," he said, "apologize to my mom." That was the first time I realized they could all stand in one room and make me feel like I had hallucinated my own life. I went upstairs, locked the door, and called my mother. She answered on the second ring, cheerful. "Hi, sweetheart." I started crying before I could speak. Not pretty crying. Not one tear. Full shaking, ugly crying, trying to talk and not being able to. She kept saying, "Claire? Claire, slow down. Are you safe?" I didn't even know how to answer that. Physically, yes, I finally said, "I think. I don't know." The minute I heard my own words, I got scared of how dramatic I sounded and started minimizing everything. "It's probably nothing. I'm probably tired. Ethan and his family are just difficult." My mom got very quiet in that way she does when she's really paying attention. "Come home for a few days." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because if I leave, they'll say I'm unstable." Silence. Then she said, softly, "Claire, people only get that much power over you if you let them define reality for you." I wiped my face and stared at the closet door. "I don't know what's real anymore." She said, "Then start with facts. Keep records. And come to us if you need to. No shame." I promised I would. I didn't tell her about the insurance policy. Not yet. I was still too embarrassed, which sounds crazy now. But shame keeps people trapped longer than fear sometimes. After that call, I started sleeping with my laptop bag zipped and tucked behind the dresser because I was afraid someone would find the home folder if they used my computer. A few days later, another thing happened. I came home and found Diane and Ethan in the kitchen with a man in a navy suit I had never seen before. He had a leather folder and one of those smiles people in finance use when they're trying to sound casual. Ethan stood up too fast when he saw me.
Hey.
You're home early. The man extended his hand. Martin Cole, family financial planner. I shook his hand, confused. Financial planner? Diane jumped in. We're helping you two think long-term. Estate planning, insurance, retirement. Boring but important. There it was again. Insurance. Martin opened his folder and pulled out a stack of forms. We were just reviewing asset protection options. Since you and Ethan are married, joint planning is smart. I looked at the papers. Some were blank. Some weren't. I saw my name on at least 2 tabs. My pulse started jumping. I'd like to review anything with my name on it privately. Martin blinked. Of course. Diane gave a little laugh. Claire, no need to be dramatic. Martin works with our family. I said, that's exactly why I want to review things privately. The room got cold. Ethan's jaw tightened. Can we not do this in front of him? I looked at Martin and said, please leave the documents. I'll review them later. To his credit, he looked uncomfortable and packed slowly.
Sure.
We can reconvene. Diane walked him out. The second the front door closed, Ethan turned on me. You embarrassed me again. I laughed in disbelief. Me? There are forms with my name on them in this house that I've never seen. He took a step toward me. Do you trust me or not?
No.
The word came out before I could soften it. He stared at me, shocked, then angry. Wow. I shook my head. Don't do that. Don't act hurt. You've been moving money, sharing my financial info, and I stopped myself too late. His eyes narrowed. You found what? My mouth went dry. Diane walked back in and looked between us. What did she find? I said, nothing.
Ethan pointed at me.
You went through my things? I almost laughed because of the hypocrisy. You mean the envelope with my name on it? For 1 second, one tiny second, both his face and Diane's face changed. That was all I needed. Diane recovered first. Claire, if you're talking about the life insurance paperwork, Ethan was planning a surprise. A responsible surprise. I felt like the floor moved under me. They had an answer ready. Ethan spread his hands, suddenly calm again.
Exactly.
I wanted to take care of you. You're acting like I committed a crime. I said slowly. Then why is my signature forged? Dead silence. Diane said, what? I looked right at Ethan. It's not my signature. He laughed. Claire, are you serious right now? You signed a stack of forms that weekend. You don't remember? No, I didn't. You did. You were half asleep on Sunday and signed near the kitchen. You always rush through paperwork. I knew he was lying. I also knew the lie sounded possible enough that, if somebody wanted to believe him, they would. Diane put on that worried mother face. Honey, maybe you're overwhelmed. Work stress can affect memory. I felt something inside me go very still. This wasn't denial. This was a strategy. I said, I'm done talking. Ethan scoffed. Because you can't admit you're wrong. I walked upstairs on legs that felt numb, shut the bedroom door, and recorded a voice memo while I still remembered every word they said.
Date. Time. Kitchen.
Martin Cole present. Diane admitted life insurance. Ethan claimed I signed while half asleep. They are saying memory issue. I listened to the memo once and saved it in the home folder. That night, Ethan didn't come to bed until after midnight. When he finally did, he lay down and whispered into the dark, You need to stop before you damage this marriage. I stared at the wall and said, This marriage is already damaged. He was quiet for a while, then said, If you keep accusing my family of things, I won't be able to protect you.
Protect me.
That word made my skin crawl. The next week was the worst one yet. Diane started excluding me from basic house routines. Family breakfast at 9? No one told me. A cousin visiting? I found out when I walked into the living room, and everyone looked at me like I had interrupted something. Vanessa told 2 relatives that I was having a hard time emotionally and misunderstanding paperwork. I know because I heard her say it on the patio while she thought I was inside. One evening, I came downstairs and found my favorite ceramic mug broken in the trash. It sounds small, but I knew Diane had done it because she hated that mug and always said it looked cheap. I stood there staring at the pieces, and for some reason that made me cry more than the bigger things. Ethan found me and said, annoyed, "Are you crying over a mug?" I wiped my face.
No.
I'm crying because I feel like I'm disappearing in this house. He stared at me like he truly didn't understand what that meant. Then came the final meeting. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. Diane texted me, "Please come to the sitting room at 3. Family discussion. Family discussion." Those words made my stomach twist. When I walked in, Diane and Harold were on the sofa. Ethan was standing by the fireplace, and Vanessa was in an armchair with her legs crossed, phone face down in her lap, like she expected entertainment. There was a manila folder on the coffee table. I stayed standing. "What is this?" Ethan spoke first, using that calm voice he used when he wanted to sound reasonable in front of witnesses. "Claire, we've all been concerned about how tense things have become."
I looked at Diane.
Concerned. She nodded, eyes soft. "We want peace. For everyone," Vanessa added, "and accountability." I almost laughed. Ethan slid the folder toward me. "I talked to an attorney." My heart dropped so hard I felt it in my throat. I opened the folder with shaking hands. Divorce papers. Not filed yet, but prepared. There was also a typed page titled Temporary Separation Terms. It said I was expected to move out within 7 days. It mentioned financial misconduct, hostile behavior toward family members, and emotional instability affecting the household. I looked up so fast my neck hurt. Financial misconduct? Ethan said, "You've been withholding money from our shared obligations and creating conflict." Withholding money? "You've been transferring money to Vanessa." Vanessa sat up. "Those were loans, and I repaid him." I said, "Show me."
She smirked.
"I don't owe you my bank history." Diane put in her soft voice, "Claire, yelling won't help." I wasn't even yelling yet. I looked back at Ethan. "You are divorcing me because I asked questions." "No," he said, smooth as ever. "I'm divorcing you because I can't live with constant accusations and paranoia." Harold finally spoke, barely audible. "Maybe everyone should calm down." Diane cut him off with one glance. Then Ethan said the thing that cracked whatever was left in me. "You need help, Claire. And I can't let your behavior ruin my family." "Your behavior? Ruin my family?" Like I was some outside thing that had entered their home and contaminated it. I stood there with the papers in my hand, and all I could think was how many times I had defended him to people who warned me he was too close to his mother. I said, very quietly, "You knew the signature was fake." He exhaled like he was exhausted. "There you go again." Diane shook her head and looked at me with fake sadness. "Please don't make this uglier than it already is." Vanessa crossed her arms. "Honestly, Claire, if you had just learned your place after the restaurant, none of this would be happening." There it was. Not marriage trouble. Not miscommunication. Control. I felt my hands shaking so hard the papers rattled. Ethan saw it and lowered his voice like he was speaking to a patient. "Take a few days at your parents' house. Sign the separation terms. We'll sort the rest respectfully." Respectfully. I looked at the page again. They wanted me out in 7 days, and they wanted me to sign a statement that made me look unstable. If I signed that, they could use it for everything. The insurance. The money. Maybe more things I still didn't know. I set the papers down carefully so they wouldn't see how badly my hands were trembling. "I'm not signing anything today." Ethan's face hardened. "Then you need to leave anyway." I looked at him. "This is my home too." Diane finally dropped the soft act.
"No, dear.
"This is our home. We let you stay here." Every humiliation I had swallowed came back at once. The pantry label. The birthday dinner. The whispers. The forged signature. The way they kept trying to rewrite reality while I was still in the room. I said, "I paid bills in this house." Diane shrugged. "Consider it rent." Vanessa laughed under her breath. I looked at Harold, hoping for one decent thing from him, and he looked away. That hurt more than I expected. Ethan picked up the folder and held it out again. Be smart. Don't make this harder. I met his eyes and said, I am done making your life easy. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Diane stood and said, cold and clear, if she refuses to cooperate, we change the locks after she leaves for work. Ethan didn't tell her to stop. He didn't even pretend to disagree. I felt something settle inside me then. Not peace. Not strength yet, but certainty. I nodded once, turned around, and walked upstairs before they could see me break. In our room, I locked the door, pulled my suitcase from under the bed, and sat on the floor staring at it. My chest felt tight. My face was hot. My whole body was shaking like I had a fever. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted my old life back before I ever walked into that house thinking family values meant kindness. Instead, I opened my laptop. I copied every file in the home folder to a flash drive. Then I emailed Naomi, can you meet me tonight? It's bad. I think they're trying to push me out. She replied in under a minute.
Yes.
Send me your location when you leave. Don't sign anything. Bring everything. I read that message 3 times. Downstairs, I could hear faint voices and a burst of laughter. Vanessa's laugh, like they had already moved on from ending my marriage. I zipped the flash drive into the lining of my purse, wiped my face, and started packing only what I could carry without help. I didn't know exactly how deep their plan went yet, but I knew one thing for sure. If I stayed in that house one more night pretending I could fix it, I was going to lose a lot more than a marriage. I found a life insurance policy on me with a forged signature, caught my husband Ethan and his family trying to gaslight me, and then they hit me with divorce papers and a fake separation document to paint me as unstable. I left with my evidence and finally decided to stop surviving and start fighting back. Naomi met me that night in the parking lot behind a 24-hour pharmacy because it was the first place I could think of that felt public and bright. I got into her car with one suitcase, my purse, and a paper grocery bag full of random things I grabbed in a panic. My passport, my laptop charger, 2 sweaters, my work badge, and the shoebox with the insurance papers. The second I closed the door, I started crying again. Naomi didn't say, I told you so. She handed me tissues, waited for me to breathe, and said, okay, we're doing this step by step. Where are you sleeping tonight? I wiped my face. I can go to my parents', but it's 2 hours away. I have work Monday. You're staying with me for now, she said. Guest room. No debate. I looked at her and almost cried harder. Naomi, she started the car. Save it. We'll cry later. Right now we make a list. At her apartment, she made tea, opened her laptop, and treated my mess like a project with deadlines. It sounds cold when I say it like that, but honestly, it saved me. I needed someone to look at my life and not panic. She made 4 columns in a document. Money, legal, work, safety. Under money, she typed bank statements, joint account transfers, credit card charges, salary records. Under legal, insurance policy verification, signature comparison, lawyer consult, divorce response. Under work, HR discretion, performance protection, emergency contact update. Under safety, where I sleep, who knows, what not to post online, location sharing. I stared at the screen and said, I hate that this is my life. Naomi nodded. I know, but this is what gets you out. I called my mom that night and finally told her everything, including the insurance policy. She was so quiet for a few seconds I thought the call dropped. Then she said, very clearly, Claire, listen to me. You are not overreacting. That is serious. Your dad and I can drive up right now. I looked at Naomi, who was pretending not to listen while heating leftovers.
No, Mom.
I'm safe with a friend. Good. Then tomorrow you call a lawyer first. I let out a shaky laugh. Naomi said the same thing. Then Naomi is smart. By the next morning, I had slept maybe 3 hours, but something in me had changed. I was still scared, but I wasn't floating around inside their version of me anymore. I had facts. I had witnesses. I had a friend who believed me. Before work, Naomi drove me to my car, and we both checked the parking lot like we were in a crime show. I hated that. I hated that I was looking over my shoulder because of people who used to call me family. At lunch, I made the first call. The insurance company transferred me 3 times before I reached a woman in policy services named Brenda. I was sitting in my car with the doors locked, my hands sweating on the phone. I gave her the policy number from the copy I found and said, "I need to verify an application. It may have been submitted without my consent." Her voice changed immediately. Professional. Alert. "Can you confirm your identity?" I did. She pulled up the file, then said, "I can confirm an application was submitted and approved pending final identity verification. I can also note a fraud concern and escalate this to our fraud team." Pending final identity verification? I repeated.
Yes.
There's a missing in-person verification step for the accidental writer due to a system hold. My stomach flipped. If I had never found that envelope, they might have completed it later. Brenda continued, "Do you authorize me to freeze all activity on this policy while it's investigated?" "Yes," I said so fast I almost shouted it.
Done.
"You may receive a call from our fraud investigator within 48 hours. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. "Thank you." Then I asked the question I had been afraid to ask. "Can you see who submitted it?" She said, "It appears to have been initiated through an affiliated broker office. I can't give full details until fraud opens a case, but I do see a broker name on file." I already knew what she was going to say before she said it. Martin Cole Financial Planning. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there, shaking. Naomi texted me right then, "Any update?" I replied. Broker was Martin. Fraud hold placed. "It's real." She sent back. "Good. Not good. But good you moved fast. Lawyer at 5? I had an appointment by the end of the
day.
The lawyer Naomi found was a woman named Laura Bennett in a small office above a dental clinic. She wasn't flashy. No giant desk, no dramatic speech. She wore a gray blazer, took notes by hand, and interrupted me only to clarify dates. I liked her immediately. I gave her the short timeline first, then the long one. Then I handed over copies of the insurance documents, screenshots of bank transfers, and the separation paper accusing me of emotional instability. Laura read everything twice. Then she looked up and asked, "Do you still have access to the joint accounts?" "Yes." "Good. Don't drain them, but download every statement going back 12 months. "Okay." "Has he threatened you physically?" I hesitated. "Not directly. But he said he wouldn't be able to protect me if I kept accusing his family." Her expression hardened. "Document that exact phrase." I did. Voice memo after. "Excellent." I almost laughed because hearing excellent about a nightmare was weirdly comforting. Laura tapped the insurance application. "The forged signature and undisclosed policy are serious. The separation terms are also a strategy. They're trying to build a paper trail that paints you as unstable before filing. Don't sign anything. Don't respond emotionally over text. Communicate only in writing when possible and keep it brief." I nodded and tried not to cry again. Then she asked, "What does your husband do exactly?" "Sales at a wine distribution company." "And the sister?" "Freelance brand consultant," according to her. Which means, honestly, I don't know. Laura leaned back. "A lot of family financial abuse cases overlap with hidden debt or business misuse. These transfers to Vanessa, do you know the source of the money going into your joint account?" "His salary and commissions."
My salary.
"Sometimes I covered bills when he said his commissions were delayed." She circled a line on one printout. "I want to look at these dates next to his work reimbursements if you have them." I frowned. Work reimbursements? At that moment, a strange memory hit me. Ethan used to leave crumpled restaurant receipts in his pockets. Expensive dinners, wine, client meetings. But after the Lobster dinner incident, he started asking me to scan and email a few receipts for his expenses because I was better at organizing. I had forwarded them from our home printer more than once. I looked at Laura. "I might have some in my email sent folder."
"Find them," she said.
"And anything connected to Vanessa." That night in Naomi's guest room, I barely slept because My brain was finally connecting things. The delayed commissions. The transfers to Vanessa. The obsession with my bonus. The financial planner tied to Diane. The fake separation paper. It didn't feel random anymore. It felt coordinated. The next few weeks were ugly, but they were productive. I moved most of my essentials from Naomi's place to a small one-bedroom rental near work after Laura told me I needed stable housing and a mailing address they couldn't control. It was not glamorous. The carpet was old, the kitchen was tiny, and the shower made a whining sound when the hot water kicked in. I loved it immediately. No one commented on what I ate.
No one asked my salary.
No one stood in doorways listening. The first night there, I sat on the floor with takeout soup because I hadn't bought a table yet, and I cried from pure relief. Ethan texted me every day at first. "You're overreacting. Mom is heartbroken. Vanessa repaid everything. Please come talk like adults." Then, when I didn't return calls and only replied through email with short factual responses, his tone changed. "If you keep making false allegations, I'll file for defamation. You left the marital home voluntarily. You need help, Claire. Let me help you before this gets ugly." Laura told me to save every message and send no emotional replies.
So I answered like this.
"I will communicate through counsel. Do not contact me by phone." It drove him crazy. Diane tried a different tactic. She emailed me a long message full of fake kindness. "Dear Claire, I am deeply saddened by this misunderstanding. No one ever meant to hurt you. You have always been sensitive, and perhaps I should have been more careful with my words. Please come by for tea so we can clear this up privately, just women." Laura read it and snorted. "That is not an apology. That is bait." I didn't go. Vanessa went straight to public humiliation. She posted a vague Instagram story about people who marry into a family for comfort then cry abuse when they can't control the money. She didn't tag me, but half her followers were mutuals. Naomi saw it before I did and said, "Don't engage. Screenshots only." So I took screenshots and added them to home. Work became my lifeline. I showed up early, kept my head down, and tried to focus. My manager, Mr. Reed, noticed I was quieter but didn't pry, which I appreciated. Naomi covered for me on days I had lawyer calls. Then one Tuesday afternoon, something happened that changed the whole direction of the story. I was searching my sent email for those receipts Laura asked about. I typed expense and scanned for Ethan and started opening old messages. Most were exactly what I expected: restaurant receipts, hotel invoices, client dinner bills. Then I found one from 4 months earlier with the subject line Ethan had written himself: "Need this cleaned up before Monday." Attached was a PDF I had scanned for him from the home printer. I barely remembered it because he handed me a pile and said, "Can you scan these while I shower?" The PDF had 3 invoices. 2 looked normal. The third was from a brand consulting company called V Creative Strategy LLC. Billing contact: Vanessa Parker. Amount: $7,800. Description: regional promotion support. My stomach dropped. I searched V Creative in my sent folder and found 2 more. Then 5 more. Different amounts. Same company. Same billing contact. Most of them had the same generic description with a few words changed. I forwarded everything to Laura and Naomi with the subject line, "I found something." Naomi came to my desk 5 minutes later and whispered, "Conference room."
Now.
I brought my laptop, and we sat in a tiny room near the copy machine while she scrolled through the invoices. "This looks fake," she said. "I know. Do you know if Ethan's company actually hired her?" "No idea. But why would he have me scan them from home?" Naomi looked at me carefully. "Claire, what if he was using company funds?" My chest tightened. "Can I get in trouble for scanning them?" "You didn't submit them. He did." I felt sick anyway. Laura called me that evening and sounded more energized than I had heard her before. "Claire, this may explain the money transfers. If Vanessa was receiving company payments through fake consulting invoices and Ethan was involved, they may have been moving money through his reimbursements and your joint account." I sat down on my kitchen floor again because standing felt impossible. "So, this isn't only about me? It may still be about controlling you," she said, but there may also be financial misconduct at his company. And if they were trying to secure a life insurance policy on you while setting up divorce paperwork, painting you unstable, that increases their leverage and your risk. My risk. Financially and personally. I want you to be cautious. No private meetings. No rides with him. No let's talk dinners. Understand? I swallowed. Yes. That same week, I got a call from the insurance fraud investigator, a man named Curtis Lang. He asked detailed questions about my signature, whether I ever met Martin Cole, whether I had ever authorized Ethan or Diane to apply on my behalf. I answered everything carefully. Then he said, Ms. Morgan Parker, for your awareness, there are irregularities in broker submission metadata on this application. We are preserving records. I didn't fully know what metadata meant in that context, but I knew it sounded useful. I asked, can you send something in writing saying the policy is frozen due to a fraud concern? He said he could send a confirmation letter that the policy was under review and inactive. Laura almost smiled when I forwarded it.
Good, she said.
That's a clean piece of evidence. By the beginning of the 3rd month after I left, my life looked completely different on the outside. I had a small apartment. I had a routine. I had therapy every Thursday evening because Naomi gently bullied me into finding a therapist, and it turned out she was right. The therapist, Dr. Simmons, was the first person who said the words coercive control and family system abuse, and hearing those terms made me feel less crazy. I also got stronger at work. Mr. Reed gave me a bigger role on a warehouse transition project because I was organized and calm under pressure, his words, not mine. It felt strange to be seen clearly in one place while being erased in another. And then one morning, everything sped up. Mr. Reed sent me a message. Can you come to my office at 10? HR will join. Nothing bad, just need your help on some records. My hands went cold instantly. HR plus records is never casual. I walked in at 10 sharp. Mr. Reed was there with a woman from HR named Denise and another man I didn't know in a dark suit. The man stood and introduced himself. Paul Mercer. Internal compliance. I sat down slowly. Mr. Reed gave me a careful look. Claire, before we start, you're not in trouble. We asked you here because your name came up while reviewing some expense documentation connected to Ethan Parker's team. There it was. I kept my face neutral. Okay. Paul opened a folder. We found several scanned invoices and receipts submitted from an IP address associated with Ethan's home network and several emails forwarding documents from an account linked to your name. We need to understand your role in that process. I took a breath. I scanned documents my husband handed me. I didn't prepare them, submit them, or know they were fraudulent. Paul nodded. Did you recognize this vendor? He slid over a page. The Creative Strategy, LLC. No, I said. At the time, no. I later realized it belongs to my sister-in-law, Vanessa Parker. Denise and Mr. Reed exchanged a look. Paul leaned forward. Do you have any documentation of that connection? I almost laughed at the question because for the first time in months, all my obsessive note-taking was about to pay off. Yes, I said. And more than that. I didn't hand everything over that minute because Laura had warned me to coordinate, but I told them enough. I said there were personal bank transfers, pressure over money, and a forged life insurance application involving a family broker. I watched Paul's expression go from polite to locked-in serious. He asked, would you be willing to speak with our legal team? Yes. He nodded. Today, if possible. As soon as the meeting ended, I called Laura from the stairwell. She answered on the first ring. Tell me. I told her everything, and she said, good. This is the opening. Do not freelance. I'm calling their legal department if you can share the contact. For the next week, my phone was a machine. Compliance. Company counsel. Laura. Insurance investigator. Bank fraud support. I was exhausted, but every call brought another piece of the picture into focus. Ethan had allegedly approved or facilitated a series of fake vendor invoices tied to Vanessa's company. Some reimbursement requests included altered receipts. Some client dinners were personal family meals. At least 2 charges linked back to the seafood restaurant where Vanessa humiliated me, one on Diane's birthday, and one a month later for another family dinner. When Paul Mercer showed me that line item in a follow-up call, I literally sat there speechless. That awful night. The one they tried to force me to pay for. Ethan had later tried to expense part of it. I started laughing, then crying, then laughing again because it was so shameless. Laura said, "Stay focused. That receipt matters because it connects the financial abuse pattern and the fraud pattern." Around that time, Ethan's messages changed again. No more threats. Now he was soft, apologetic, almost sweet. "I miss you. I know I handled things badly. Can we start over? Dinner somewhere neutral? Mom is willing to apologize. Vanessa, too." I sent everything to Laura, and she called me immediately. "This is fake reconciliation. Don't go." I wasn't going to. Good. If he pushes for an in-person meeting, we can use a controlled setting later. Controlled setting sounded clinical, but I understood what she meant. Then he sent the message that made my skin crawl. "If you work with my company against me, things will get worse than you think. I'm trying to protect you." Protect you? Again. I forwarded it to Laura and to Paul Mercer. That same evening, Laura told me there would likely be a formal meeting at Ethan's company within 2 weeks. Not a court hearing yet, but a compliance review with legal present because the company wanted statements and records consolidated before making employment decisions or referring anything out. She asked, "Are you willing to attend in person?" My stomach turned, but I said yes. "Good," she said. "Then we prepare." That became my whole life for the next 10 days. I printed everything in labeled folders. Joint account transfers, screenshots, statements, dates, amounts to Vanessa. B. Insurance policy and fraud hold, application copy, forged signature comparison, insurer fraud review letter. C. Separation terms and messages, the unstable language, texts, emails, fake apology bait. D. Invoices and receipts, the fake vendor invoices, expense emails, restaurant charges. E. Timeline notes, my dated logs and voice memos transcribed. Laura helped me tighten the timeline so it read cleanly. No emotional paragraphs, just facts. Naomi sat with me at my kitchen counter one night while I sorted papers and said, "You know what's funny?" "What?" "They trained you to keep quiet, but that same personality made you the best record keeper they ever could have had." I looked at her and smiled for the first time in days. "I hate that you're right." She grinned. "I know." I also met with Curtis, the insurance investigator, for an in-person signature comparison. He brought a copy of the policy application and asked me to sign my name multiple times on a form. When he laid them side by side, even I was shocked at how obvious it looked when you weren't emotionally involved. "Your natural slant rises to the right," he said. "The policy signature is more level and pressure-heavy. Also, the letter formation differs." I asked, "Can you state that in writing?" He said, "I can state the signature is under fraud review and inconsistent with samples provided. Final determination goes through our document examiner." That was enough for now. The night before the company meeting, I barely slept. I kept replaying the restaurant scene in my head, Vanessa smirking, Diane smiling, Ethan calling me embarrassing. At 2 a.m., I was sitting on my couch in the dark when Naomi texted me from nowhere. "You awake?" I replied, "Yes." "Nervous." She sent, "Good. Stay nervous." Nervous means alert. But don't be scared of them. They only worked when you were alone. I read that 3 times. They only worked when I was alone. The meeting happened on a Thursday morning in a glass conference room on the 9th floor of Ethan's company headquarters. I had been there once before for a holiday party, back when I still thought his coworkers respected him, because he was successful. The lobby smelled the same, coffee and polished wood, but I felt different walking in this time. Not like a wife visiting, like a witness. Laura came with me. Naomi waited downstairs in the cafe because she had taken an early lunch just in case I needed support after. When we entered the conference room, Ethan was already there with Vanessa and Diane. Seeing all 3 of them together in a corporate office was surreal. Vanessa looked expensive and nervous in a white blouse and gold earrings, trying too hard to seem important. Diane sat stiff and silent, hands folded over a handbag in her lap, like she was at church. Ethan wore a navy suit and that calm expression he used in front of people he wanted to manipulate. Then he saw me. For a second, his face flickered. Not guilt. Not sadness. Calculation. He stood. Claire. I said, Ethan. Vanessa gave a fake smile.
Wow.
You brought a lawyer. Laura pulled out a chair and sat down. Yes. A few minutes later, Paul Mercer came in with another attorney from the company, a woman named Sheila Grant, and an HR representative. A compliance analyst joined on speakerphone. Paul opened the meeting in a flat, formal tone. This is an internal compliance and fact-finding session regarding expense submissions, vendor invoices, and related misconduct concerns. We are recording this meeting for internal purposes. Vanessa's foot started bouncing under the table. Ethan folded his hands. I already told you. Any irregularities were bookkeeping mistakes. My wife is upset about our divorce and is trying to drag my family into it. There it was. Reverse victim mode, right on schedule. I felt my pulse in my neck, but I stayed quiet because Laura had told me not to rush. Paul nodded without reacting. We'll review each item. For the first 20 minutes, they went through invoices,
Dates.
amounts, vendor records, IP logs, email chains. Ethan kept trying to explain everything as routine. Vanessa did freelance promo support informally. Some receipts were scanned from home for convenience. The accounting descriptions may not have been precise. Then Sheila asked Vanessa directly, can you provide contracts, deliverables, campaign reports, or tax documentation for V Creative Strategy services billed to this company? Vanessa blinked. I mean, I'd have to check. Sheila repeated, do you have them? Vanessa looked at Ethan. I handled things verbally a lot. Paul said, for over $40,000? Silence. Ethan jumped in. This is getting blown out of proportion. Laura finally spoke. Not if there's a pattern. Paul looked at her. Ms. Bennett, your client may present any directly relevant records at this time. Laura turned to me. That was the moment. I opened my folder and slid copies across the table one set at a time, keeping my hands steady by force. Exhibit Set A, I said, and my voice sounded calmer than I felt. Joint account transfers from Ethan and me to Vanessa over 3 months. These dates overlap with the invoices and reimbursements under review. Vanessa went red. Those are private. Sheila said, they are relevant if they reflect proceeds or related transfers. I slid the next set. Exhibit Set B, copy of a life insurance application on me, submitted through Martin Cole Financial Planning, with my name typed and a signature I did not provide. This includes a fraud hold confirmation letter from the insurer. Diane's lips parted. Ethan's head snapped toward me. Paul looked at the letter, then at Ethan. What does this have to do with company expenses? Laura answered before I could. It establishes a broader pattern of coordinated financial misconduct, coercion, and document irregularities involving the same family members and affiliated broker. It also speaks to credibility where forged signatures and false narratives are concerned. Ethan laughed once, sharp and ugly. This is insane. Claire, are you serious? Bringing marital paperwork here? I looked at him for the first time since the meeting started and said, you brought my life into your fraud. He stared at me. I slid the next packet. Exhibit Set C. Draft separation terms accusing me of emotional instability and financial misconduct, delivered after I questioned transfers and insurance paperwork. Also included are messages asking me to meet privately and messages threatening me if I cooperated with your company. Paul's expression changed at that. Threatening messages? Laura pointed to the printed texts. Highlighted. Sheila read quickly, then looked up at Ethan. Did you send this message? If you work with my company against me, things will get worse than you think. Ethan straightened. That's out of context. I almost laughed. Vanessa jumped in, voice high now. This is a divorce fight. Why are we talking about family drama? And that was exactly when the old restaurant memory hit me so hard I couldn't ignore it. I reached into folder D, pulled out the seafood restaurant receipt and the later expense submission, and put them in front of Vanessa. "You remember this restaurant?" I asked. She froze. Even Diane went still. I continued. "Diane's birthday. Lobster. Oysters. Expensive wine. The night you volunteered my bonus and told me I didn't belong in your family if I couldn't pay the whole bill." Vanessa swallowed. "What does that have to do with anything?" Paul answered before I could. "This receipt appears to have been submitted as a client entertainment expense." I looked at the table, then back at them, and I said the two words slowly. "Separate checks." The room went silent. Vanessa's face lost color so fast it was almost scary. Her hand moved to the table edge and started trembling exactly the way it did when people are trying not to panic in public. Ethan snapped. "This is ridiculous." I kept going, because I wasn't shaking anymore. "That night, you tried to force me to pay for your celebration. Later, he tried to bill his company for it. At the same time, money was moving to Vanessa, fake invoices were being submitted, and my personal financial information was being shared without my consent." Diane whispered, "Claire, stop." I turned to her.
"No."
"You told me generosity mattered while your son and daughter were using me and calling me unstable for noticing." Paul held up a hand, but not to stop me. "Let her finish." So I did. I explained the timeline clearly. The dinner, the account transfers, the envelope, Martin Cole in the kitchen, the forged signature denial, the "you're imagining things," the separation papers with the unstable language, the threat messages after I left. No shouting, no crying, just facts. When I mentioned the phrase Ethan used, "I won't be able to protect you," Sheila wrote it down immediately. Then Paul asked Ethan one final question, very quietly. "Did you authorize or participate in creating, submitting, or approving invoices for V Creative Strategy without legitimate services rendered?" Ethan leaned back, looked at the ceiling for half a second, and then tried one last angle. "Everyone here knows how companies work. We smooth things all the time. This is not fraud. This is expense flexibility. And now my estranged wife is weaponizing private issues because she's angry." Paul didn't blink. "That is not an answer." Ethan looked at Vanessa, then at Diane, and I watched him realize for the first time that he was not in his mother's kitchen anymore. Nobody here cared about his tone. Nobody was going to call me dramatic and move on. Vanessa started talking too fast. "I only invoiced what Ethan told me to invoice. He said accounting didn't care as long as totals looked normal. He said he needed help because commissions were behind. He said." "Vanessa," Ethan hissed. She stopped, but it was too late. Diane closed her eyes. Paul clicked his pen and said, "We will pause here." The next 10 minutes were a blur of procedure. HR stepped out. Company counsel whispered, with compliance. Laura leaned over and told me quietly, "You did exactly what you needed to do." When they came back in, Paul's tone was even flatter. "Effective immediately, Ethan Parker is suspended pending final review. Access to company systems and accounts is revoked today. We will also be referring portions of this matter to outside counsel and, if necessary, relevant authorities." Ethan stood up so fast his chair scraped hard against the floor. "You're suspending me based on this?" Paul said, "Based on records, inconsistencies, and statements made in this meeting." Vanessa looked like she might faint. Sheila turned to Vanessa. "Do not delete any records, emails, or messages related to V Creative Strategy. A preservation notice will be sent." Diane finally spoke, voice shaking with anger. "This is harassment. My family is being attacked." Laura answered calmly, "No, Mrs. Parker. Your family is being examined." I don't know why that line hit me so hard, but it did. Maybe because for the first time, someone said out loud what I had felt for months. I wasn't attacking them. I was describing what they did. As we stood to leave, Ethan moved toward me like he wanted a private word. Paul stepped between us without touching him. "Not now," he said. Ethan looked at me over Paul's shoulder, and the mask was gone. He wasn't charming. He wasn't calm. He looked furious and scared. "This isn't over," he said. I met his eyes. "For me, The worst part is over. Then I walked out with Laura. In the cafe downstairs, Naomi was waiting with 2 coffees and the kind of face people make when they're trying not to ask 1,000 questions at once. She stood the second she saw me. What happened? I sat down, looked at her, and laughed from pure adrenaline. Separate checks. She stared for 1 beat, then burst out laughing with me because she knew exactly what I meant. The weeks after that meeting felt strange, almost unreal. There was no instant movie ending where everyone apologized and justice arrived in 1 envelope. It was slower than that. More paperwork, more calls, more waiting. But the direction had changed, and it never went back. Ethan's company officially terminated him after their review. I found out through Laura, not from him. The stated reasons included expense policy violations, false documentation concerns, and failure to cooperate honestly in compliance review. Vanessa's Consulting LLC was dropped from vendor records and then pulled into the company's legal inquiry. I don't know every detail of what happened next on her side, and honestly, I didn't need to. What mattered was this. The money stream stopped, and she was no longer posting smug stories online. She went quiet. Martin Cole, the family financial planner, became a problem for them too. The insurance company fraud team requested records from his office and sent me written confirmation that the policy on me was voided and under fraud investigation. Laura said that letter was gold. The divorce process still moved forward, but now the tone was completely different. No more emotionally unstable nonsense in official drafts. No more 7-day move-out pressure. No more fake concern. Ethan's attorneys suddenly wanted a civil and efficient resolution. Laura told me. Translation: they know the old strategy won't hold. We negotiated from facts, not fear. Because I had records, the financial picture became much clearer than Ethan ever expected me to see. He had hidden credit card debt. He had used marital funds in ways he downplayed. He had treated my income like a backup tank whenever he needed to patch his own spending. I didn't get everything. Real life is not magic. But I got out clean. I kept my own savings. I recovered a portion of the joint funds tied to obvious transfers and expenses. And most importantly, the final divorce paperwork did not include a single word suggesting I was unstable, paranoid, or financially abusive. That mattered to me more than I can explain. Diane tried one last move about 2 months later. She came to my apartment building without warning. I saw her from the window first, standing by the entrance in a camel coat, looking around like she was too elegant to be there. My first instinct was to hide. My second instinct was anger. Instead, I texted Laura, then I went downstairs but stayed outside the locked front door, so there was glass between us. Diane gave me that same polished smile. "Claire, can we talk?" I said, "You can talk from there." Her smile twitched. "This has all gotten out of hand." I crossed my arms. "It got out of hand when your son forged my signature." She lowered her voice. "You always loved drama." It was almost funny hearing that line again because it sounded so weak now. I said, "No, I loved peace. That's why you thought I'd stay quiet." She glanced around lobby, then tried a new face. Sad mother, wounded elder. Ethan has lost so much. I looked at her through the glass. I lost a year of my life and my sense of safety in your house. She pressed her lips together. Families make mistakes. I shook my head. Families don't build paperwork to erase someone. For a second, she looked at me with pure dislike. No mask. No manners. Just cold anger that I had stopped playing my role. Then she said, "You think you won because he lost a job?" I answered honestly, "No. I won because I believe myself now." I turned and walked away before she could say anything else. My hands were shaking when I got back upstairs, but not in the old way. Not helpless. More like my body still remembered fear even when my mind didn't belong to it anymore. A few months after the divorce was finalized, life got quiet. Real quiet. I bought a used dining table and assembled it badly by myself, then laughed when one leg was uneven and fixed it with folded cardboard. I started cooking for one without feeling sad. I painted one wall in the living room a soft green just because I liked it and no one told me it looked cheap. Work got better. Mr. Reed promoted me to operations manager on the warehouse project after 6 months, and for the first time in years, I had a title that felt like mine, not just helpful person who picks up slack. Naomi became family in the best kind of
way.
We started a Friday habit where she came over in sweatpants, we ordered Thai food, and she judged reality TV while I pretended not to love it. I also kept therapy. That was a big one. Dr. Simmons helped me notice how often I apologized before I spoke, even when I had done nothing wrong. She'd stop me gently and say, "Try that sentence again," without apologizing. It sounded simple, but it changed me. As for Ethan, I only heard updates through legal channels or the occasional mutual acquaintance. He moved into a smaller apartment after leaving his parents' house for a while, then apparently moved back in again. That part did not surprise me. His professional reputation took a hit in our city's industry circle.
Salespeople talk.
Compliance issues travel fast. Whether he eventually rebuilt somewhere else, I honestly don't know. Vanessa sold her condo about a year later. Naomi found that out from public records because Naomi is nosy in a useful way. We both stared at the listing and said, well, at the same time. Harold sent me one letter during the divorce, handwritten, 3 paragraphs long. He said he was sorry for not speaking when it mattered. That line made me cry. I never wrote back, not because I hated him, but because I had nothing left to say. Some apologies arrive after the damage is already built into your bones. One Sunday, almost a year after the lobster dinner, I was reorganizing a drawer and found the original restaurant receipt copy in a folder I forgot I kept. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at it for a long time. Lobster. Oysters.
Chablis.
Dessert. So much of my old life was in that little paper. The humiliation.
The first boundary.
The way they all acted shocked that I refused to pay for being disrespected. Back then, I thought separate checks was just me protecting one bonus. I didn't know it was the first time I had chosen myself in that family. Now I understand that line differently. Separate checks means this. Your choices are yours. Your lies are yours. Your greed is yours. Your consequences are yours. I don't carry them anymore. I still get nervous sometimes in crowded rooms. I still double-check documents before I sign anything. I still feel my chest tighten if someone says, "Trust me," too quickly. But I also sleep well in my own home. I eat dinner at my own table. I know where my money goes. And nobody gets to tell me I imagined what I lived through. Now, when I hear someone say, "She's too sensitive," I pay attention because a lot of cruel people use that line when the truth is getting too close. If you had met me the night I sat on the floor in Ethan's room packing a suitcase, you would have seen a woman who looked broken. I thought my life was ending. It wasn't. It was the first night I stopped begging to be accepted in a house that only wanted my silence. From everything I went through, I learned that people who benefit from your confusion will always call you dramatic when you start keeping records. If you're in a situation like mine back then, please remember, facts are your best friend, and boundaries are not cruelty. And sometimes the smallest sentence you say to protect yourself is the one that saves your whole life. If you've ever gone through something similar or you want to share your own story, write it in the comments below. Don't forget to share this story with your friends, like the video, and subscribe so you don't miss the next stories.